Guys, good to see you. And I mean that every time I'm here, there's more people, more energy. There's been remodeling happen. I'm just so proud of you and this church. My name's Dave, and I'm one of the pastors here at Timberlake. And I've got to let you know, you feel this excitement about tonight's game. I am personally aware of 8 people from Timberlake Church who are at the Super Bowl in person. 8 people. One of them works for the Seahawk organization. One of them is a staff member of ours, right? The other 6 are members. And I bring this up because back in the day, there used to be something called Pastor Appreciation Week. I don't know how nobody reached out and said, Pastor, we'd love to bless you. But man, it's going to be a fun game. So for generations, everybody thought it was going to be impossible to reach the summit of Mount Everest. They just said it's not humanly, we're not built as humans to do this. The temperature is too cold, the weather's too unpredictable, the oxygen is too thin, the altitude too high, right? All these different excuses. But then in the 1920s, what started to happen was people decided they were going to make attempts, and different expeditions were put together. And in every case, what happened is people would either turn around at some point or they would move on and then end up losing their life. So every time someone turned around or lost their life, it was just reinforcing this idea that it is impossible to summit the mountain. It's unconquerable. Then in 1953, a New Zealand beekeeper by the name of Edmund Hillary, along with a Sherpa climber, they do it. The impossible is accomplished. And of course, it isn't because the weather was no longer unpredictable. It wasn't because the temperature got warmer. It wasn't because of all of a sudden this mysterious pocket of oxygen was found. It was because just over time, they learned how to prepare better. Technology improved. Preparation was able to be done in different ways. And so finally, the impossible was done, and since then, of course, it's been done many, many times. But I bring this up because in 2026, our focus that we kind of chosen for a church, but not just our church in general, as us as individuals who make up the church, is new ground. And so we're doing a teaching series we launched last week called New Ground. And the question we're asking is very straightforward, and that is this: where do you need to take new ground with your faith in 2026? Where do you need to take new ground with your faith in 2026? And this is very important. I'm not just asking where do you need to take new ground in life, because you could say, well, I got to take new ground in my marriage, new ground financially, new ground as a parent, right? Those are great answers. But the reason we're asking with your faith is because you can move forward in your marriage, but if your faith is not integrated more and more into your marriage, what's it matter? If we're a follower of Jesus, I mean, what does it matter? If we're moving forward financially, but our faith is not playing a role in our finances, what does it matter? So we're saying, what does it look like in 2026 to take new ground with our faith? New ground relationally, mentally, emotionally. Because if we can learn to integrate and bring more of our faith into these areas, what happens is we mature, we become healthier, and we end up moving into another season. And so it's going to look different for all of us. For some, it may be you're stuck in a pattern of negativity and you're always thinking negative and going to worst case scenario, which as a follower of Jesus, let's just say it. That's not the best attitude. When you get on social media and some committed follower of Jesus is always doom and gloom, it's like, bro, you're missing the point, right? And so maybe for you, it's a learning to renew your mind and think differently. Maybe for you, you have relationships that are strained and your personality is kind of like, it is what it is, and you're moving on. But maybe in 2026, God is calling you to do your best to live at peace with everyone. And so maybe this year is a year of being a bridge builder. Or maybe taking new ground is learning to talk different and be someone who lifts others up rather than put them down. Maybe it's learning to love your spouse just like Christ loved the church, which is obviously a challenge. It might be integrating your faith into your resources and learning to honor God in your resources. Maybe for you, it's someone hurt you deeply, and every time their name comes to your mind, you're bitter, you talk bad about them all the time, you want revenge. And maybe in 2026, for you, taking new ground is learning to forgive them as Christ has forgiven you. Or if you're honest, maybe you look at your worldview, your values, your character, and you say, you know what? The people around me, the culture around me, for whatever reason, it's been chiseling away more and more at those things. And I need to do what King Solomon of Israel talked about thousands of years ago, where he said, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Whatever it is, the summary of what it means to take new ground with our faith is to determine what God wants us to do and then take steps of obedience to doing it. And that's challenging. It's complex. It's the reason we put it off. And so what I want to do is today, I want to look at a story in which a group of people took new ground in a very physical, external way, even though often the ground we need to take is internal. Because walking through the story, there's a lot of parallels. And it's a story that takes place in the first part of our Bible, which we call the Old Testament. Now, if you're new to faith, the Old Testament is a collection of 39 different books. So it's not one book, it's 39 different books that work together to give us insight into the history and the faith of ancient Jews. And because it's a story that could maybe be a little bit confusing with all the dates and different details, we'll pull up like a timeline, we'll pull up some pictures along the way, all right? So it starts out in 1875 BC. This is when a guy by the name of Jacob, along with his extended family of 70 people, they move from where they're living in southern Canaan, and they settle in an area of Egypt known as Goshen, okay? This was a 300-mile journey. So they moved from Hebron, now they're settling in Goshen. And when they arrive in Egypt, they're met with open arms. Everybody is excited to have them. They're high-fiving, they say, you are welcome in our nation. But what happens is that family of 70 starts to grow. And now it turns into a community of thousands and eventually a community of tens of thousands of people. At which point, Egyptian leadership starts to grow very concerned and paranoid. They're saying, well, if they keep growing like this and breeding like rabbits, eventually they might overpower us. Eventually, they might want to take control and go to war. Which is very reasonable if you think about it, right? Like, oh, that could happen. Because we feel the same way, I'm guessing most of us do, about AI and robots. Right? I love AI. I'm fascinated. I love the idea of robots doing household chores. I hate, and that's a very conservative word for the amount of hate I have toward it. I hate lawn work. I hate weeding and gardening. I know some of you love it. I hate it. I can't wait till they have a robot that can do that. All right? So I look forward to that day. But I don't want a robot taking my job. You know what I'm saying? I don't want you to show up on a Sunday and be like, hello, brothers and sisters. It is good to have you here. I don't want that. Great. I have a robot that can do my garden, but I don't want it looking like Brad Pitt and talking to my wife all nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have some paranoia, and that's what happens. So out of fear of the Egyptians, the leadership decides to make this tragic choice of forcing the Hebrews into slavery. And that was around 1600 BC that they do that. Again, we're using estimated times, but this is what happened. And for hundreds of years, the Israelites, or the Hebrews, they're going to go by both titles, live under the oppression of the Egyptian government. And then around 1446 BC, God commissions Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. He says, I've chosen you to go to Egypt and lead the people out of there. And it's fascinating. If you're not familiar with the story, Moses doesn't want it. He's like, dear God, choose someone else. Like, he's resistant. He doesn't. But God said, nope, I've chosen you. I've chosen you to be the one. And when you lead them out of Egypt, you're going to eventually be the one who leads them to the promised land. I'll show you a picture of the promised land. So they're living here, and they eventually have to get there. And this is where their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, are from. Remember, Jacob's down from here. And God said, hey, I'm not just going to give you a village. I'm not going to just give you a little town. It's yours. I've got big plans for you. Now, just like anything in life, it doesn't happen quickly. It's not like Moses walks into Egypt and says, hey, guys, we're out of here. Peace, right? It's not like that. It's through a series of miracles. It takes some time, but eventually they do leave. And there's a couple million of them that leave. That's what scholars estimate. And what happens is they set up camp pretty much in the desert. And they live in the hot sun. It's like living in Phoenix during the summer, but it's all year long. And then days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months. They're getting crabby. They're bickering with each other, fighting. But after 1 year, they finally find themselves on the edge of the land God had promised them. Okay, so this is around 1445 BC. It's been a year. They can look over the border of where they're at, and they see this land. They're like, that's what we're going for. This is super exciting. So on a map, here's where you would find it, all right? That's kind of where they're hanging out. And while they're high-fiving each other and everybody's excited, God speaks very clearly to the leader, Moses. And here's what he says to Moses. He said, the Lord now said to Moses, send out men to explore the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of the 12 ancestral tribes. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. Now I just want to pause right here and just remind us, Moses had a massive responsibility. He's leading, he's making strategic decisions. He's having to help people who are bickering and settle disputes. I mean, he's got a lot going on. And yet somehow in the midst of that, he is able to decipher and hear and know the voice of God. And my hope for all of us is in the midst of our busy lives, in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of being pulled in a million directions, that you and I could get a sense when God speaks to us. And my prayer this year is that every one of us will have a sense of where God's inviting us or challenging us to take new ground with our faith. And so Moses hears the voice of God, and God says, hey, I want you to send out 12 men to explore the land of Canaan. Do your due diligence. I want you to see the land I'm giving you. And so for 40 days, these 12 spies are like Lewis and Clark. They're learning new terrain, they're observing the people, they're sampling the food, and eventually they return and they give a report to Moses. We read about their report. This was their report to Moses. We entered the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit it produces. Like, they brought back fruit. Check it out. It's like getting back from Wenatchee. Here's some apples, some grapes. Here's some bottles of wine. This is incredible. And they're excited, rightfully so. They've been spending the last year sleeping in tents, living in the desert. And now they've looked at this land that has established cities and homes that have been put together and fields that have been plowed, and there's crops that are growing. They're like, this is Disneyland, right? This is the happiest place on earth. This is incredible. But they said, well, we also have some challenges ahead of us. Here's what they said next. But the people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there. A couple verses later, they continued. They said, the land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw were huge. We even saw giants there. They repeated themselves. I thought there was a mistake in the slides. I'm like, nope, they didn't. No, they repeated. We even saw giants there. And then I love this. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers, and that's what they thought too. Like, apparently they said, what do you think of us? Yeah, grasshoppers, right? This is incredible. These spies are saying, man, we want to take new ground. We look at this land God's promised, it's incredible. But there's too many challenges, there's too many difficulties, and they just came up with excuse after excuse after excuse. Don't miss this. Excuses will always keep us from taking new ground. Excuses will keep us from learning to love our spouse like Christ loved the church. Because, oh man, if he was married to my spouse, if God was married to my spouse, he'd understand why I can't do this, right? It will keep us from forgiving others as Christ forgave us. Because if Jesus would have been betrayed in this way, I mean, I know he's got Judas, but I'm telling you, I've been betrayed in a more significant way. Like, it's easy to just come up with excuse after excuse. Excuses are going to keep us from humbling ourselves. Excuses are going to keep us from seeking help for an addiction. Excuses will keep us from joining a group, from building a community with other followers of Jesus. It's going to keep us from taking responsibility for our faith. Right? And anytime there is new ground to take with our faith, anytime there's places where we're like, okay, this is where I got to integrate more of my faith because for some reason I've kept my faith and the other parts of my life separated. Anytime there's new ground to take, it's just a very common thing to just, I'm too busy, it's not the right season, I'm not prepared enough, I don't have enough theology, right? Whatever it is. There's always excuses. So from time to time, I'll take an online course just to further my education. And I've got a degree and all that, but it's just something I do. And so I took a course in this last year, 2025, that had 8 months to complete, which I tend to see those things as kind of guidelines, not hard and fast. And but sure enough, after about 8 months, I'd completed 50% of the course. So I signed on one day to just do some more work, and I was locked out. And so I played dumb. I just emailed the professor. I said, I seem to be locked out of my course. Can you explain why? And he said, yeah, it's been 8 months. Your course is done. And so I had some cheap excuses, and I acknowledged, I said, I know these are cheap excuses. I probably shouldn't even throw them your way. I said, I just got busy, distracted, didn't think much about it. And I will admit, I didn't make it a priority. Could you give me more time? So he said, I will open it for 1 week. You have 1 week to complete the course. Otherwise, you have to start over. Now, do you think I did it in 1 week? No, you better believe in me. Yes, I did. I need more encouragement than that. Yes. Why? Because all of my excuses were gone. I'm like, okay, I just got to go for it. So here's the thing about excuses is they protect us from growth, but they also they protect us from risk, but they also keep us from growth. Excuses are easy to have, but they always keep us from taking new ground. Why? They protect us from risk. I don't have to do anything scary, but they also keep us from growth. They keep us comfortable, right? We become familiar with the territory around us, and this is where I get to stay, but they keep us from maturing. During the Great Depression, as I'm sure you're aware, most people had an approach to money that became very, very, very conservative, which is understandable. The market crashed, banks were closing, and so people were traumatized financially. They're holding on to cash, they're avoiding debt, they're not investing, they're not expanding, they're not risking what little they have. And most families in businesses, and I would have been in the same boat, are like, we just got to focus on getting through, not necessarily getting ahead. But there were some exceptions. There were some people who said, no, this is a great opportunity to try to take some new ground. One of those guys was Conrad Hilton. So Conrad owns a small chain of hotels in Texas, and financially, he's getting beaten down. He's losing some of his property. But while most people in the hotel business were like, dude, there's no way we're gonna get ahead, he started thinking creative finances and being able to use very little cash. And so he was able to purchase hotels in that season with almost no cash at very discounted rates. And his risk paid off, as I'm sure you're very aware, right? Because then as the economy recovered, these hotels that he had gotten at these sale prices all of a sudden are skyrocketing in their value, and that became the foundation for the Hilton empire. So excuses, yes, they allow us to stay comfortable, but they also keep us from taking new ground. And so when we sense that God's inviting us to take new ground in some area, when we sense that God's stirring our heart, maybe the Holy Spirit's convicting us and saying, hey, it's time. It's time for you to learn to honor me with your resources. It's time for you to bring me into your marriage. It's time for you to bring me into your career because you seem to keep me at a distance in your career. Right? It's time for you to bring me into your friendships. None of your friends even know that you're one of my followers. And I want you to bring your faith into this, where it's just obvious there's something different about you. Our willingness to take steps forward and take new ground has huge implications. And some of you know this because you're following Jesus today because of a decision your great-grandfather made and your great-grandmother made, and then it was passed down to your grandparents, passed down to your parents, and you're following Jesus today because of decisions made years ago. But our decision on whether or not we're going to step forward and take new ground has huge ripple effects for the good or bad. And so the spies come back, and you got to remember, all of the people of Israel, all of the Hebrews are like, man, we're ready. It's been a year. We're not living in the desert no more. And then they hear this report of these spies, and they're like, it's scary, and we're going to be demolished. And man, people start to believe it. Here's actually what we read and how the community responded to the report of the spies. Then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night, like Patriot fans will be this evening, right? Their voices rose in great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness, they complained. Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it just be better for us to return to Egypt? I love it. They're like, we just want to go home. Then they plotted among themselves, let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. I mean, they're sounding like a bunch of hormonal, emotional teenagers who didn't get their way, and now they want new mom and dad. Right? John's mom and dad's a lot nicer than you. Right? And if I was there, I know I'd be doing the same thing. We just get caught up in the moment because of the report of these spies. Now, if you're familiar with the story, you know it's unfair to say the spies came back because there were actually two of them, Joshua and Caleb, who actually had a different response. They saw the hurdles, they saw the challenges, they saw what every other spy saw, and here's how they responded. They said, we did not care. It's about us. It's always been about us and what we do, and now we're going to the Super Bowl. Actually, that was Mike McDonald after they won the championship. Okay, here's what we read actually happened. Two of the men who had explored the land, Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, tore their clothes. They said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. Don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them. So Joshua and Caleb said, it's true. Compared to them, we look like grasshoppers. They even told us, it's true. There's challenges. It's true. It is difficulty, but we can do this. God is on our side. Let's not buy into the fear narrative. Let's see how far God's brought us, and let's keep moving forward. They knew it wouldn't be easy. But they said, we got to do it. Taking new ground always requires courage. I'm sure you've heard it before. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward in spite of fear. It's saying I'm terrified. If there's no fear, we don't need courage. And courage looks different in different seasons and in different circumstances, right? So sometimes courage is saying yes when it'd be way easier to say no. Other times, courage is saying no when it'd be easier to say yes. Sometimes courage is staying put when it'd be easier to leave. And other times, courage is leaving when it'd be easier to stay put. That was my story 2.5 years ago when I'm living in Wisconsin, started a church, felt comfortable. My whole family lives in the city. I mean, I thought I'd be there for life. And I just couldn't get away from this stirring that God was doing in my heart, that the season has come to an end, and I just felt like I was supposed to be at Timberlake, and the board had reached out. But man, I'm not gonna pretend it was easy. It was terrifying. Sometimes courage is asking for help when it's way easier to pretend like everything's okay. So courage looks different. And again, our willingness to stay put or move forward, our willingness to have courage in any circumstance has ripple effects. And so you've got the Israelites who are ready to move forward, but now the 10 spies have just created so much fear and anxiety among them that they were like, oh, we can't do it. And what ultimately happened is they missed their moment. God says, it's obvious you're not trusting me. You still need to be formed as a nation. And so, okay, now's not the time. And for decades, they continued to live in the desert, in the sleeping in tents. I mean, it's just miserable. But then the day comes. After 40 years, God says, all right, you've been formed. And they're back at the edge of the land looking into Canaan. This is around 1406 BC. The Israelites are ready to start taking new ground. And this is what this is what we read of that scenario. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River and into the land I am giving them. Be strong and courageous. Why? Because we need courage. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give to them. So God says, Joshua, this isn't going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be challenging, but you're the one. I now appointed you. You're going to lead the Hebrews into this new land. So exciting moment. People are high-fiving, but again, it's not fun, it's not easy, and it's not predictable. Anytime we decide we're going to take new ground, we're going to encounter the fact it's not fun, it's not easy, and it's not predictable. This is why it's often very common for us to look back a year from now, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, and say, I don't know that I've matured much in my faith. I don't know that I've learned to bring my faith into my relationships any more than I did then. I don't know that I've learned to bring my faith into my finances. I don't know that I've learned to bring my faith into my parenting. I don't know that I've learned to bring my faith into my words and how I speak any more than I did 5 years ago. Because we just get comfortable. And so here's what to expect when taking new ground. We'll go through these fairly quickly. Number one, there will be battles. So Joshua leads the Israelites across the Jordan River. They're now right there they're just entering into the land of Canaan. And in just a few short chapters, like 6 chapters, we read about 13 different battles and military campaigns that had to be fought immediately. And it wasn't like a one and done. Some of those battles lasted for generations. After those 6 chapters, we come across other military campaigns, other battles. But I'm just saying, right away, they experience, this is not going to be easy. And anytime you decide, I'm going to bring my faith into this area of my life, I'm going to learn how to forgive, which at its very core is just saying, I'm not going to retaliate against this person and pay them evil for evil, right? Anytime you say, this is what I'm going to do, I promise you're going to have battles. Like the moment you decide, I'm going to learn to love my spouse, I'm just like Christ loves the church, I'm going to do this. It's like for some reason your spouse just starts tap dancing on every last nerve you have. And it's like, Lord, help me, right? Anytime you decide, I'm gonna start being a better parent, I'm gonna start being an example for my kids of what it looks like to follow Jesus, it's like they're demon possessed. Like, how did that happen? Right, I'm telling you, when we decide to take new ground in our faith, we're gonna encounter battles. And the thing about battles, especially like spiritual battles, we can't see them. It's awkward to talk about. In environments like this, we could talk about the unseen spiritual battles out there, right, with principalities and powers. But let's be honest, in everyday conversations, we're not talking about spiritual battles, but we all feel them, and we know they're real. Because the moment we decide, I'm going to act in obedience, I'm going to take a step of faith, I'm going to move in, I'm going to bring my faith into this new arena, into this arena of my life, I'm going to take new ground. Anytime we make that decision, all of a sudden, what happens? We feel resistance. I have a buddy who, he decided, I'm going to begin to bring my faith into my finances. He said, I've never honored the Lord with my finances. It was like 2 weeks after he started to do that, he lost his job. He's like, I thought everything was going to be up and to the right. Now, God's blessed him since then, but he's just this, man, Dave, how do I continue to try to honor the Lord when this is what happens? And I get it. But I have a family member, man, been faithfully following Jesus, loving his wife. And the marriage came to an end. Anytime we decide to take new ground, I'm telling you, we're going to encounter battles, and it's not fun. Anytime we decide we're going to reprioritize, we're going to bring our faith into our work, I'm going to be a person of prayer. I'm going to pray first rather than just let it be reactionary. We encounter the spiritual battles that are there. So number one, there will be battles. Number two, there will be losses. At some point, you're going to experience loss of comfort, loss of convenience. We're going to have to say no to things we used to say yes to. Loss of identity in some ways because we become associated with being a certain way, talking a certain way, doing certain things. Now we're losing that. In some cases, we lose friendships because some people will like the old us and not the new us. We might lose some of our time because, man, I had all this free time, all this Martin. Now I'm focused on being a better parent, and I've got to re-engage. And so there will be losses. If you're going to take ground in any area of your life with your faith, just know there's going to be battles and there's going to be some losses. And there's not only going to be some losses, there's going to be a cost, right? There will be a cost. So you don't just lose out. Now there's something you have to pay forward. During the English Civil War, there were very few churches being built in England, and it was because England stopped supporting the Church of England. They would do its support. And so in many places, the churches that had already been built had, basically, they were no longer being used for the same purpose. They were being repurposed. Decorations were being stripped. Many of the buildings were being neglected. And for the most part, they stopped building new churches because they just knew if we're going to build a church, you know what's going to happen. England might come in. They might say, hey, you have to repurpose it for this. They're going to take all the things we decorated it with and put all these beautiful things in. They're taking it out, and they're using it. And so pretty much came to a standstill. But not fully to a standstill because during that same time period, the Staunton Herald Chapel of the Holy Trinity was built. And so while almost no new churches are going up, this one's going up. And the reason it went up is because of a guy by the name of Sir Robert Shirley who decided out of his commitment to Jesus, out of his faith, out of his love for the Church of England, he says, we can't allow the kingdom of God to come to a standstill. Let's keep moving forward. And it was frowned upon. They did that so much so that he was thrown into prison, and he died before the chapel he had paid for with his own money, by the way, was brought to completion. And so here's a guy, when nothing else seems to be moving forward, he says, hey, we got to advance. Consequently, today, over the door of the Staunton Herald Church in England is this inscription. It says this: in the year 1653, when all things sacred were throughout the nation either demolished or profaned. Okay, so when everything in this nation that was considered sacred, religious, when it was demolished or profaned, Sir Robert Shirley founded this church, whose singular praise is to have done the best things in the worst times. In the worst times, he took new ground. When everybody else was standing still, he said, we're not standing still. We're moving forward. It's easy to get comfortable. It's easy to just kind of find your territory and be like, this is what I'm staying in. Matter of fact, the Israelites eventually settle in the land of Canaan. And after settling, hundreds of years later, 500 years later, God speaks to the Israelites through the prophet Isaiah. And through the prophet, he reminds them, I delivered you from slavery in Egypt. I brought you through impossible circumstances. I sustained you when you were in the desert. I mean, just starts reminding them of all the new ground. I brought you into Canaan. You've taken all, like, I did this. I'm God. But then through the prophet Isaiah, here's what God says next. He says, but forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I am going to do, for I am about to do something new. And when he says forget all that, he's not saying lose your memory, don't remember my faithfulness, don't remember all the territory I've helped you take. He's saying, I want you to know I'm not just the God who was and who did things in the past. I'm the God who is doing something today and will do something in the future. I've got more ground for you to take. So I'll go back to the question we started with. Where do you need to take new ground with your faith in 2026? Where have you kind of separated a part of your life from your faith? What is God inviting you to this year? Challenging you? What is he stirring through the Holy Spirit in your heart to do? And I realize it's easy in a setting like this to try to think about it for a little bit, and then we leave and, we've got a million things going on. I get it. I'm the same way. It's also very easy to be comfortable, especially, during our teenage years or young adult years, we're trying to expand territory. And eventually what happens is we just get comfortable with our life. I'm not saying we're not growing financially or we're not growing in different areas, but I'm just saying our faith just becomes, we're just going through the motions. We do our thing. We show up. We check the box. I think this is most of us. We're like animals this way, right? Because animals, once they have their territory, they stay next to that territory. You got squirrels. They live within a couple acres. Right, and then you have deer and larger animals. They have a several mile radius, but they want to become comfortable with it. They want to know the terrain. That's what makes them feel safe. And so they stay within a few miles. It's not like you have a Wisconsin deer in Seattle because it just kind of keeps walking, right? It's like, no, they have territory. So I've talked about the ugliest cat I've ever seen before. It lives in my house. This is my daughter's cat. Lord help us, right? So someone in first service said, wow. I was like, okay, that's a great definition, right? But this cat lives in a 10 by 10 room because I don't let it go through the rest of my house. I'm terrified of cats. I'm not playing. I'm genuinely terrified. I don't like them. They're creepy to me. I don't want furniture being ripped up, so that's where it's allowed to live. But apparently my life is cursed because right now I have 3 bobcats in my yard. All the time, but daily I see them on my cameras. All right, so here's a couple of them, but I just see them walking by the cameras all the time, and it's like, this is a feline Airbnb. Like, God, what happened? A few months ago, I'm having a little snack on my deck with a couple of my friends, and I kid you not, one bobcat walks by 10 feet away and just looks at us. Like, I'm in its territory, which in a way I was, but I wasn't terrified, on bobcats. There was, pretty much behave. But I did think about where am I on the food chain and all that stuff, but here's the deal. Walking through my yard every day. Why? Because they have their terrain. We have our terrain. We go through the motions. Where do you need to break going through the motions this year? Where do you just need to say, okay, at the end of 2026, I want to look back and say, God, by your grace, by your faithfulness, man, you helped me take new ground in this area with my words, with my attitude, with my prayers. Man, I didn't ever think of myself as a person of prayer, but man, I've started reading the scriptures more. Man, the way I treat my coworkers is so different because I'm trying to take new ground with my faith and just my interaction with that. The way I do business, the way I do marriage. What is it for you? My prayer is that wherever you sense God leading you, God directing you, that you would not only have the wisdom to identify what your next step looks like, but the courage to take that next step and to stay with it and to stay faithful as you move forward. Let's go ahead and stand. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to wrap up with one final song.